Hello, and welcome to the Travillian Next podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Liesch, and with me today, I'm joined by John Antolik, Managing Partner and CEO of My Private Shares, Sam Ishee, CFO of Florida Capital Bank, and Andy Borrmann, CFO of Lincoln Savings Bank in Iowa. Gentlemen, welcome. Uh, Today,
Thank
we
you.
are going to be focusing on the My Private Shares platform and how it can be of service to privately held banks. And so, John, I think let's lead off with you. Please give some background on My Private Shares, such as its history, ideal client, growth in the platform, or anything else you want to highlight.
Thanks for having me here today. So, My Private Shares was started by myself and my co-founders back in 2022, late spring, early summer 2022, where we hired a development team really off my primary experience being a private equity investor and advisor for the last 15 years with my core partner, Mike Christ. We were focused and have been investing in private banks, other private organizations. My business partner sits on the board of a bank in Missouri. And what we've encountered through our own investing experience, as well as being directors, is that oftentimes the communications between private companies and their investors are typically, ad hoc and not a lot of process around that. And so the bigger issue, though, comes where shareholders may have needs for liquidity. Life events occur and shareholders have liquidity needs for anything that may happen. And when those liquidity needs pop up, private companies really don't have a great solution in executing around those liquidity needs. So My Private Shares was developed as a platform system to assist private companies with interactions with shareholders when they seek liquidity. That, as I referenced, that could be for any typical event. And what normally transpires in that case is private companies try and find a matching process, either with a current shareholder or current director, and really don't have any good resource other than maybe a manual list that they might utilize to match their shareholders. So we built the platform with a bulletin board system that was dedicated to each private company, with our initial focus as an organization on private community bank that has so many shareholders, and to assist them in recruiting new shareholders and then building a better matching system for liquidity needs of shareholders.
That's great. Great. So, who can join right now? Is it any privately held bank, and then who can join on the other end? Who can see who is listed, who's listed shares on the platform?
That's a good question, because that question sort of poses a typical misunderstanding of the platform. The platform is only available to those that the private company that's our subscriber invites. So working with a community bank like Sam Ishee's, they're based in Jacksonville, Florida. His institution, he's the CFO of Florida Capital Bank. They invite all of their existing shareholders and anybody else that might be a prospective shareholder. The only people that can see Florida Capital Bank's platform are those that they invite. And I said misunderstanding from the perspective that many people feel like they're losing control and worry about, that sort of shareholder liquidity need. But this really restores that control in a good positive framework that makes the environment build parity amongst all the shareholders to gain access to information, as I was referencing for communications, as well as access to the ability to sell your shares or your ability to buy more shares.
Got it. Very helpful. Um, Andy, I know you've worked at privately held banks and publicly traded banks before. How familiar are you with the My Private Shares platform? Might you have any questions for John now that you are at a privately held bank?
Yeah, so I was not aware of the platform until we set up this podcast, but I do think it's an interesting concept and something that can be really beneficial to shareholders at privately held banks. I mean, one of the long-term issues that all privately held banks have is individual shareholder needs, right? Not all shareholders' needs align. Timing doesn't align, family situations, whatever it may be. And so, I do think there's a good time to be a private bank. There's a really good time to be a public bank, depending on your capital needs and structure and abilities and size and whatever. But the private side always creates that illiquidity that is difficult to get around for some investors. So I think it makes it easier on both ends. A, to bring in new people in your community, and then also B, to create some liquidity if there is a situation that requires it. My first question for John would be, how do you distinguish in certain situations where you may have very large shareholders of individual banks versus, the bank I'm at right now has a couple of larger shareholders, but not like a 50, 60, 80 percenter. And we do have a ton of, 1,000 shares here and 3,000 shares there for a bank that's been in business since 1902.
That's a good question, Andy. So normally, that information, and I would say not even normally, in all situations, when shareholders come on our platform, they don't see who the other shareholders are. They don't see the number of shares other parties have. It's merely a bulletin board if somebody wants to buy or sell, and they create their own post based on expiration timeline and then the number of shares that they either want to sell or they want to purchase. On our platform for each company, what we work with each client to build is their unique transfer instructions. So the nuance you may be referring to is the disparity that may exist between the size of shareholders and restrictions because you're a regulated entity around transacting, or even any of your, foundational legal agreements, shareholder agreements, et cetera, and restrictions that you may have. All of that is communicated on our platform uniquely to each client. And I refer to client here as the company, the privately held financial institution, where we put on the platform the transfer instructions for that specific institution. That doesn't just detail the mechanical work of the transfer, but any nuance associated with the legal agreements. And one of the main reasons we built this, expanding upon the initial question at the start of the podcast, was really to sort of help save the time of the CFOs and CEOs, because these are details that are not at the forefront of any shareholder's mind until that event occurs that they either want to sell shares or they want to buy shares. And so the goal of the platform really is to restore better time and insert better process for you in the C-suite, so that you can provide a resource. And then what I believe, is a success to every business is a disciplined, repeatable process around this interaction with shareholders. Did that answer your question?
Yeah,
Sort of.
it sort of leads to another question, which is, do you work directly with our transfer agent? Do you sit in between us? Like, how would that relationship continue to work?
Well, really consider the platform's an extension of your, internal team, your shareholder relations team, right? So in the instance that you use a third-party transfer agent, those transfer instructions would include the details specific to whoever your transfer agent is at whatever level of detail you need to provide. Information around forms, where to send documents, where to ask questions. Some financial institutions handle the transfer work internally. They have enough transactions that it's not overburdensome, but it's at the point where they can manage that internally. And then ultimately, as a tool, we ended up forming a white label relationship with a 20 plus year SEC registered transfer agent. And we do offer those services. We're not looking relatively to disintermediate that market, but we do provide those transfer services. And we primarily got into that market because many of the financial institutions that have hundreds of shareholders require some greater level of white glove service than the traditional transfer agent market is used to provide. And that's just managing through the nuance of either aged shareholders, physical certificates in bulk, or nuance around other aspects related to documentation, et cetera.
I think it's an interesting product that you're developing, especially the timing of the development, given the de novo boom we had, sort of pre-great financial crisis. The age of those investments now, I mean, a lot of those banks are still around. Some of them sold, but a lot of them are still around. And now you've been invested for getting on 20 years, I think there's definitely some timeliness to this sort of development.
Yeah, I was just at a conference up in Minneapolis earlier this week, the Bank Holding Companies Association in Minneapolis, and topical information was discussed by a couple of law firms, a couple of investment banks about the requirement of succession planning and preparing for succession planning for shareholders, not only prospecting and marketing your company to promote the insertion of new shareholders, which our platform can easily do when you invite shareholders, but more so sort of that proactive nature of understanding that there's going to be transition. There's a generational difference between the investors of 20 years ago, 40 years ago, or even closely held partners than minority investors and investors today that are in their 30s or 40s, et cetera.
Yeah, it's I think it's a different mindset today too as well, with the upcoming investors versus the investors that might have been investing in community banks 20 years ago. The expectation of technology, liquidity, most of those folks have never seen a stock certificate, much less held one in a safety deposit box, right? So, it's like I said, I think it's a good time for this product.
Well, and even from the investment standpoint, my partner and I have been in the investment community for the majority of our career, 30-year careers. Financial institutions are still an excellent, stable investment, can be a very attractive investment from a multiplication standpoint as well, if you're a patient investor. However, people get excited about new technology, AI, medical advances. Those come with, I think, tremendously more risk. This is a strong industry. It's needed as a backbone in the country. And so in order to survive, you have to think beyond sort of the capital raise initially and how you're going to service these shareholders. And when you have a lot of shareholders that ranges from 100 to 1,000, you're going to have these events that if you don't have process, you're going to be interrupted by what I call the post-it theory of random post-its that show up on your desk that say you have to deal with, Jane Doe, the investor, or Mike Smith, the investor.
Sam, go over to you. You are on the platform. So can you just provide some information on what have been the benefits for you in Florida Capital Bank and what's been your experience by using My Private Shares?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've been with My Private Shares for just over a year now. When we were first introduced to John and My Private Shares, the first thing I thought of was all the time that this was going to save me from having to play matchmaker with shareholders. So it would allow me to spend a little bit more time at the beaches here in Florida. And it has given me a little bit more time. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to get back out to the beaches. But what it does do, it provides a portal for us. We use it first and foremost as a communication tool for us and our shareholders, but also for our investors to connect with one another. It gives us this bulletin board interface that allows our investors to post for shares they're looking to either sell or to buy. This has been great for our shareholders. We have several hundred shareholders, and it's saved us because you get in different times of the year where people are looking to buy and or sell shares. They call the CFO, they'll call our CEO, and then we've got to pull out our old Rolodex and try to remember that short list of who's looking to buy or who's looking to sell, and then also to play matchmaker. And sometimes some people don't want to give their name of when they're looking to buy or sell shares. So My Private Shares allows users to post anonymously if they want to, so they don't have to put their name in. They can also put their name in. They can put the price they're looking to buy shares or sell shares and the quantity that they're wanting to as well. This also gives me as a CFO, it gives me a dashboard. I can see how many transactions have been posted, how many times people have logged in, how active are shares being posted out there, and transactions taking place. So it has saved us some time. It has provided a portal for communication between us and our shareholders. And also it gives us an area for secure transactions as well. So we can upload our transfer agent instructions. So that way they can communicate with one another. We never have to touch the cash, and we don't have to play the middleman in negotiating the price.
What else can be uploaded onto the platform? Excuse me. Like I know information on the bank, other materials that might get someone to be interested in the shares. What can a bank upload to kind of tell their story?
I would tell you, like the folder environment is up to the creation of the company, right? So if you're inviting new investors, we always tell, uh, the private companies, private financial institutions, talk to your legal counsel, create a folder related to your legal documents and any information you would need to provide to a new investor. Obviously, you have to go through and collect, the specific legal documents to bring in a new investor if there's an exchange of shares, but you can provide that resource. We have other clients as well that will not only provide financial statements or a quarterly update, but they might even provide, a book valuation report or even an independent valuation on a sporadic basis. That doesn't happen quite as frequently, but it's certainly more of a topic of discussion because of this wave of succession that's happening and the lawyers that are reaching out on behalf of clients asking for valuations to put a value on the estate in preparation, for any IRS transfer. But additionally, the platform supports private folders. So if you have a shareholder, you want to send a specific document to that shareholder and put it in their hands, such as a 1099 related to a dividend payment, you can do that. But recently we found out as well too, some of our clients have used it to create a folder and then communicate, a tender offer. It's an opportunity to put the documents in the hands of shareholders, and documents that get uploaded on the platform generate an email that notifies all the shareholders that have registered that a new document is on the platform. The platform operates off of a notification system. So as Sam referenced, when shareholders use the platform, and if they were to make an inquiry to another post, right, there isn't an allowance for free communication, but you can communicate on the individual posts. Email notifications would happen back and forth. So any sort of communication, the goal here with that portion of the system is to make it easier. And then most importantly as well too, you have an archival system. So when shareholders are asking for prior data or any information, you can just load it on there and then have a record that you shared it with your investors. I think that's what's becoming more and more important today, is really documenting sort of your process with your shareholders. Um, you know, Shareholders come in all sorts of different personalities, shapes, and sizes. And all you're trying to do is run your company as best you can and then be transparent with whatever your communications tools are. And the platform is really almost like a compliance tool to assist in that manner.
Yeah, it sounds like it could be very helpful with communication to shareholders, probably more so than ever in the past at privately held banks.
Yeah, it's interesting. Many of the banks don't have the email addresses for their shareholders at the onset. And it's
Wow.
just a matter of a collection process in the order of priorities that pop up on the day, right? So Andy had referenced, we're a new process. We built this really based on the need for private companies and what needs to be done there. And absent that and sort of the technology wave, if you go to Google, you'll be introduced to these secondary market brokers who, quite frankly, how are they going to know about Florida Capital, the story to help raise money for Florida Capital's single investor that wants wants liquidity better than the existing shareholder base and Sam and his co-leaders at the bank? This platform basically puts a process around that old sort of list approach, and it keeps the control with the bank. You still know who all your shareholders are, and it doesn't necessitate the need to maybe go to, a professional listing board like the OTC, where you give up some of your control and knowledge around who your shareholder base is.
Got it. I guess how has my private shares affected recruiting at any of your clients? I know it can be tough for privately held banks to attract talent if they can't offer share liquidity like at a publicly traded institution. It seems like this sort of helps solve a portion of that problem.
That's a great question, right? Succession planning for shareholders goes hand in hand with succession planning for leadership, right? When you're trying to attract talent to serve in various roles, whether it's lending roles, the finance office, leadership, et cetera, you have to put together competitive compensation packages. And the world obviously is evolving in a manner where, you guys can speak to those trends on the compensation types that are out there. But many organizations are not in capital raise mode, maybe don't have the number of shares in treasury that they can issue to leadership. But this now provides a platform for them where you can invite some of your new key executives or key employees to the platform to be able to buy shares from other shareholders. I was at a conference recently, and a CFO client of ours had basically shared that he loved that aspect because his compensation arrangement was attractive. However, he was so invested in the future of the financial institution that he wanted to buy more shares and go about that the right way. And this now allowed him to register for the platform, see sell posts, but he even went a step further. He created a buy post relative to wanting to buy shares. And I would tell you, naturally, this is not a tool that has existed in the market, and people are always focused on the return on investment, but you really sort of have to think about when's the return of the investment. And everybody here on this call is generally, in our client base, they're in it for the long haul, unless there's a predetermined path to go public. But many clients like Sam and Keith at his financial institution, they aspire to continue to remain private. And this tool really assists with that key piece, because eventually your shareholders can push you towards, decisions maybe that become more challenging around their own personal liquidity needs. And this can be something that tremendously supplements that strategic decision making and the ability to continue to remain private.
Definitely. Sam, Andy, do you have any questions that you want to ask John here before we wrap up?
Yeah, John, I would just sort of to that point, and Sam, I know your shareholder base is a little unique given the large single investor. Have you been or have you seen any of your clients, try to move significant investors through the process? A 5%, 10% owner. Have you seen that happen at this point?
We have. I don't know that it was by design by the financial institution. It's been more of through succession and estate settlement, where children of a principal owner in the bank inherit the shares, want to seek liquidity, and it's a significant sum, seven-figure sum in valuation of the financial institution. And what's happened in that particular case is, the family made a series of posts, and the entire lot in this specific institution, which is in Ohio, was absorbed over a 2 to 3 week time frame. Right? It's not going to be an immediate. It's also not going to be certain. Right? It's going to be dependent upon your current shareholder base and a lot of other information relative to how the bank is executing. But I don't know if Sam has much experience, because we don't keep track of the actual transactions that occur on the platform. We really just serve as a tool, and we allow that to occur unless we are the transfer agent.
John, I've enjoyed using the platform, and once you get a service, you're always looking to what's next. If you can share any insights into what's next for My Private Shares, I'd like to hear them.
Oh, that's a great question. As I've learned, developing a technology company, it's important to have a roadmap. That roadmap, I think, first and foremost, starts with customer and prospective customer feedback. Right? This is not what's next, but this year we put on transaction history as a pricing discovery tool. It's right on the summary page. That was a recommendation by a client of ours in Missouri. So that was a useful tool. We have 4 people on our development team that are consistently working through improvements on the platform. We're going through a major enhancement right now for mobile access. We all know mobile access changes with iOS updates. So we have someone consistently working through that. And for Google, we're about to reintroduce mobile access, and people will only see that differently and in a better context over the next coming weeks. And then we have some API report integration for our transfer agent clients that allow for immediate pull down on items such as proxy tabulation reports, shareholder lists, other details along those lines. But I think, what will become of sort of the future, I think right now our tool is really laid out as a very simple, important resource. And the feedback's really going to come from the market from that standpoint. We have not been desirable of getting and turning this into a commission-based product or being the actual exchange that touches money. That would involve a significant change in compliance and regulations. So we really view this as the client's tools, and we will continue to enhance based upon feedback we get from the clients. Folder environment needs to always stay current. One thing we'll have soon, Sam, is we're going to have recent uploads, so people don't have to go digging through folders, so they can look at the files much more quickly. So you can go and see the last 5 files that are uploaded without having to nest through the folder environment. Little sort of tools there. The goal overall, though, because the shareholder base generally is an aged one, is to keep it very simple. We don't want to turn this into something like a dashboard on a car that becomes overwhelming for shareholders that they don't know how to use, and they start driving questions back to you as our client. We're a subscription-based platform. We intend to be an extension of your team and have that service there, but really take as much of that work off as possible. So if you're telling me there's additional work that you've now encountered, we'll try and find a way to put that on the platform to make it easier related to shareholder relations.
Excellent.
That's great.
Look forward to seeing some of those enhancements.
Yeah, thank you. So we're about out of time, but I just wanted to thank you all for joining. John, great to hear more about the platform. Thanks for answering these questions. And Sam and Andy, thank you for giving us your perspectives. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and we'll all speak soon.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you,
All right.
Travillian.
Thank you.